The albums of 1987. I'm going to start off with Black Sabbath, the album, The Eternal Idol. This would be the first album with Tony Martin on vocals. The lineup also featured bassist Bob Daisley, drummer Eric Singer, keyboardist Jeff Nichols, and of course Tony Iommi on guitar. Jeff Nichols provides bass on the song Black Moon. Another bassist, Dave Spitz, provides bass on the track Some Kind of Woman. Former drummer Bev Bevan, if I'm pronouncing his name right, he provides percussion and cymbal overdubs on the track Scarlet Pimpernel. Former vocalist, the late Ray Gillen, he does the sinister laugh on the track Nightmare. The 2010 deluxe edition features Ray Gillen's vocals. On Disc 2, the demo tracks. Disc 1 on the 2010 deluxe edition also features the tracks Black Moon and Some Kind of Woman. I'm going to go ahead and say my favorite tracks in the album would be The Shining, Ancient Warrior, and Glory Ride. I'm also a fan of instrumentals, so I'm going to go say Scarlet Pimpernel. And the closing track, the title track of the album, reminds me a lot like the song Black Sabbath. The two models on the album cover were hospitalized from paint poisoning. Bass guitarist Dave Spitz is the brother of former Anthrax lead guitar player Dan Spitz. This is also the band's final Warner Brothers album release. This may also be another reason why this album is not included on the Anno Domini box set. There might be a lot of mixed opinions about these lineup changes Black Sabbath went through. I've always thought they put out quality material as time went by, with plenty of creative diversity with Tony Iommi, Jeff Nichols, and Tony Martin together. And not to sound negative, but comparing it to Ozzy Osbourne's solo material during this time frame, I find Black Sabbath's music far superior. And yes, I'm aware of his commercial success. 2. Corrosion of Conformity, Technocracy, an EP on Metal Blade Records. This will be the only release with vocalist Simon Bob Sinister, and the final release with Mike Dean on bass, who came back later on 1994's Deliverance album. Sometime after this EP was released, Phil Swisher joined this lineup, who happened to play Mike Dean's bass parts really well. With the addition of Simon Bob on vocals, he delivered a more melodic approach to their hardcore punk sound. The EP features the title track, Crawling, Happily Ever After, and a re-recording of Hungry Child. This is also during a time when the band members were getting better at their instruments and better songwriting as well. Woody Weatherman's guitar tone was even more beefed up, and the addition of Black Sabbath inspired doom metal riffs. The Simon Bob era of the band recorded several demos that were intended to be an album that never happened. I'm not sure what exists, but I think they actually did record professional recordings. One of them being a song called Bound, which is on a compilation called Rat Music for Rat People, Part 2. There are some of these high-quality demos floating around on YouTube, and they were actually produced pretty well. Number 3, we have Dio, Dream Evil, his 4th solo album, and also the final album to feature drummer Vinny Appice until his return on 1993's Strange Highways album. This album also features guitarist Craig Goldie from the band Rough Cut, as well as the band's keyboardist Claude Schnell, and also the last album to feature Jimmy Bain on bass until his return in 2000 on the album Magica. The Dio band mascot, Murray, this is also the final appearance of that character. The 2 singles on the album are All the Fools Have Sailed Away and I Could Have Been a Dreamer. My favorite tracks are the title track, Sunset Superman, and Faces in the Window. The album cover even has the elf from the Elf album cover, Dio's former band, before Rainbow and Black Sabbath. I actually do find the album great, even though this is during a time of his decline of commercial success. Up next, I'm going to throw a live album on here by Ozzy. Tribute, Randy Rhoads. And to me, live albums are a hit and miss. The gem on the album is the outtake of the acoustic track D that Randy Rhoads performed on the debut album, Blizzard of Oz. This live album is taken from 2 separate events with the Randy Rhoads era of the band. So most of this album you hear Rudy Sarzo on bass and Tommy Aldridge on drums, but the tracks Goodbye to Romance and No Bone Movies feature Bob Daisley on bass and Lee Kerslake on drums. These two separate events were recorded in 1980 and 1981. It has been a long time since I've actually listened to this, but for the sake of the late Randy Rhoads, it's definitely worth a spin. Next is Anthrax, Among the Living. This would be album number 3 on Megaforce Island Records. According to the band members, this is their breakthrough album that got them to perform in larger venues, also being a gold seller in the United States. This might be my favorite 80s era Anthrax record. Sometimes it's a tie with Spreading the Disease, hands down. Those two, I can't. It's back and forth. But yeah, the lineup is Joey Belladonna on lead vocals, Scott Ian on rhythm guitar, Dan Spitz on lead guitar, Frank Bello on bass, and Charlie Benante on drums. This lineup recorded 4 albums in a row in the 80s and 1990. I find the whole album good, and it's kind of hard to pick a favorite on this album because the singles are I Am the Law and Indians, which are fucking phenomenal. But Caught in a Mosh, Among the Living, NFL, I think NFL might be one of my top favorites. Efilnikifisin, I can't even pronounce it. They're kind of goofy. They like to do the backwards spelling that became kind of popular with their little signature that they do. Skeleton in the Closet, yeah, fuck. The whole album is just fucking tits. Fucking double D's plus. This is when the band started writing songs in a strange format where drummer Charlie Benante wrote the guitar riffs that Scott Ian would record on the guitar. Scott Ian would write the lyrics for Joey Belladonna, and they'd work on the melodies. That's kind of like the time. This is like the time when they were doing this formula that they've pretty much been doing ever since that. I guess that's not an uncommon thing for some bands to do, and if it works, go for it, but it's not my, I'm a musician, songwriter myself. I like to write everything that I do, and I pretty much do like everything when I record, except for the drums, but I pretty much tell the drummer, how to play, what to do, and all that, tempo-wise, and don't do this, but do this instead, but, without sounding like a total dick, but I mean, it's a formula a lot of bands will actually do that. Oh yes, and also, Anthrax released the EP, I'm the Man. Yes, the rap single they did. A lot of metalheads gave the band shit, or complained about it. Let the band have fun. Let them do some shit. Let them be goofy. Who gives a fuck? What's the harm in that? Anyway, there's also a really, really good version of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath by Black Sabbath. And the debut album by Testament, the album The Legacy. And the band was actually known as The Legacy before changing the name to Testament. The name idea came from Billy Milano, S.O.D. and M.O.D., who is a friend of the band. And vocalist Chuck Billy was pretty new to the lineup, so he gets credits on one song called Do or Die, where original vocalist Steve Souza, who joined Exodus, many of the lyrics were contributed by him. So yeah, the album lineup will be Chuck Billy on vocals, Alex Skolnick on lead guitar, Eric Peterson on rhythm guitar, and he does a couple solos as well, Greg Christian on bass, and Louis Clemente on drums. Yes, this is another start-to-finish masterpiece album. I think it needs to be remastered, maybe remixed. It's a good fucking album. It just needs a boost in the sound. But for favorite tracks, I'm going to say Do or Die is probably one of the top ones. Alone in the Dark, definitely Burnt Offerings, The Haunting, Over the Wall. I can go on. The whole album is good. I think it just depends on my mood. But yeah, this is a killer debut album. This is probably like a really good way to make an impression for your first album, especially for thrash metal. A lot of their debut albums are either like good or decent. This band actually, like, their debut is a really fucking good album. We're getting close to the 10-minute mark, so I'm gonna try to hurry this up. Sammy Hagar, I Never Said Goodbye. This was released when he was a member of Van Halen, and he had to fulfill a contract as a solo artist with another record label. Eddie Van Halen provides bass on the album. The video for the song Hands and Knees features Eddie Van Halen, Alex Van Halen, and Michael Anthony before the song starts. Eagles Fly and Give to Live are the singles for the album. I do need to revisit this one because this is one I kind of did forget about. I've been mostly fixated on his classic pre-Van Halen albums. Sepultura, Schizophrenia. This is their second full-length album, and their debut to feature lead guitarist Andreas Kisar, who also handles the bass guitar tracks on the record. Probably one of my favorite Sepultura albums. I really love the re-recorded version of Troops of Doom, as well as the opening track, well, after the intro, From the Past Comes the Storms. Here's one you probably don't expect. Michael Jackson, Bad. The whole album is a masterpiece. Every track is a hit. My favorite tracks would be Leave Me Alone, Another Part of Me, and I dig Stevie Wonder a lot, but the song is great. Also, it's called Just Good Friends. A lot of metalheads dig Michael Jackson. I mean, they dig 80s pop and new wave music. But Michael Jackson's songs have a lot of heavy elements to them, even the songs with no guitar. I mean, he had multiple talents, and definitely one of them was collecting an audience from different subgenres of music. Metallica, the Garage Days Revisited EP. This would be the first time the band's recorded with new bassist Jason Newsted at the time. The EP consists of 5 cover songs. You could look them up yourself because I gotta wrap this up. One thing I'm a fan of with this release is that it's a really raw production. I kinda wish more bands would record this way. Quick mentions, you got Sodom, Persecution Mania, their second album, leaving behind their black metal sound for a thrash sound. But I ain't complaining, they put out good shit. Features a cover of Motorhead, Iron Fist. And speaking of Motorhead, Motorhead put out an album called Rock and Roll. This would be their 8th album. Features the track Eat the Rich, and the return of drummer Filthy Phil. Here's a band I would love to see live. I've seen Motorhead once, thankfully, but this band, Trouble, with their 3rd album, Run to the Light, on Metal Blade Records. This would be the last album on Metal Blade Records, and the first time to have bass player Ron Holzner. And it features a cover of the Beatles, that disgusting song about a bukkake called Come Together. No, I'm just kidding. I really dig the tracks, The Misery Shows, and Run to the Light. I mean, practically all their albums are a start to finish. Okay, everybody knows about Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna mention it, why not? Yes, great album. Okay, mentioned it, now shut the fuck up. Pentagram, Day of Reckoning. I'm gonna go with the title track on this one. This is probably my second favorite era of the band, which is the Victor Griffin on guitar lineup. My very favorite eras would be the first days, the 70s stuff that they put out. I really dig that a lot, but this is a good fucking record. I will say Relentless I probably like a little better than this one, but I do like the production a lot, and I think they should have put a couple more songs on it. Otherwise, it'd be 100% perfect. Last but not least, Exodus, Pleasures of the Flesh, their second album, and first album to feature vocalist Steve Zetro Souza, formerly of Legacy and Testament. 3 tracks on the album were co-written by former vocalist Paul Bailoff: Brain Dead, Pleasures of the Flesh, and Seeds of Hate. Ironically, I think those are my 3 favorite songs on the album. It is pretty good overall, and they do a pretty good cover of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap by AC/DC. And there you have it. Thank you for checking out Mean Street Journal. Until next time, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the fucking bell. Please and thank you. Mean Street Journal is also on Spotify. Go to tpublic.com for Mean Street Wear for all your offensive apparel needs.